It's July 31st, 2012. We're in London for the Olympic final of the men's 200-meter butterfly. The top three swimmers have turned and begun their final charge to the wall, hoping to secure a gold medal. There were a lot of different ways this race could have ended, but what actually happened was arguably the least likely outcome. Regardless of how the race ended, history was going to be made one way or another. These next 30 seconds depict exactly how history was made that day and how it changed the course of international swimming as we know it. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's take a look back. Before we get to the end of this race, we need to understand a few things, starting with the history of the 200 fly at the Olympics. Nearly 6 decades ago, at the 1956 Melbourne Games, the butterfly stroke was contested as a separate event for the first time. The ladies got the 100, while the men got the 200. Tough break, guys. The first 6 times this race was contested, the United States took home 5 gold medals and maintained a majority share of the podium, which included 2 consecutive sweeps. The next 5 times saw 5 different countries win gold and featured 3 straight Olympics where Team USA didn't win a medal. Once the 2000s rolled around, the United States was back on top, but the parity of who was second and third remained, with 5 different nations being represented on the podium. Here at the 2012 Games, that parity has held up. We see 7 different nations represented in this gold medal final, 3 of which for the first time. Towards the end of the race, 3 swimmers from 3 different countries are fighting tooth and nail to get those tired arms on the wall first. A gold medal would mean something different for each of these swimmers, and it's important to understand who these guys are and what each of them is chasing. Let's start with this guy, whom you might recognize. Michael Phelps and winning the 200 fly are basically synonymous today, but there was a time when he was just the new kid on the block looking to make a name for himself. The 2000 US Olympic trials presented the best opportunity to do so, and he absolutely seized it, finishing second to make the Olympic team thanks to an incredible last 50 comeback. Despite placing 5th at the Sydney Games, the future was bright for the 15-year-old. Less than a year later, Phelps won the 200 fly world title and broke the first of his many world records. He wasn't done yet though. 2 years later, he went back-to-back as world champion, which hadn't been done since the 80s. Entering the Athens Games in 2004, Phelps looked primed to win Olympic gold in this event, and he absolutely delivered for Team USA, winning it all in a time that was just off his own world record. If that wasn't impressive enough, he grabbed another world title in the 200 fly in 2007 and defended his Olympic gold a year later at the Beijing Games, making him the first man ever to do so. Fast forward to the London Games in 2012, and we see Phelps is in good position to make it 3 golds in a row in this event. However, it was never guaranteed he'd even be here. Later in his career, Phelps revealed that he struggled to get through the next 4 years after his historic Olympic performance in 2008. By the time the games rolled around, he wanted nothing to do with the sport and was ready to retire. Through these struggles, Phelps still managed to win 2 more World Championship golds in the 200 fly to complete the first ever three-peat. As hard as it was mentally for Phelps to get in the water to perform, he was still at the top of his game from a physical standpoint. At trials, he earned a spot on Team USA in multiple events, and after making it through the heats and semifinals with ease, he stood before the world with a chance to make history in the 200 fly. The 14-time Olympic gold medalist hangs with the group for the entire first 50, displaying total control over his swim as he does. He turns first and continues that smooth stroke into the second 50 as a group of 4 swimmers begins to separate from the rest of the field. This front half strategy is right in line with what we saw in 2008, the only difference being that Phelps can actually see where he is in the water. He opens up his lead to a few tenths over his competitors and really starts to increase that tempo the third 50, much like he did in 2008. However, this time around, Phelps hasn't created that same separation from his competitors. Right above him are 2 guys that have a real shot at pulling the upset. But who exactly are they? Let's go top to bottom. Takeshi Mitsuda is no stranger to racing Phelps in the 200 fly. In fact, you could argue he's been his most consistent competitor. Mitsuda entered the international scene right around the same time as Phelps, and for the next decade, these two squared off 6 times in the 200 fly at major international meets. Whether it was the Olympics, World Championships, or Pan Pacs, this event routinely saw these 2 swimmers racing each other, and every single time Phelps came out on top. Despite his year-over-year improvements, Mitsuda just couldn't match up with Phelps in his signature event, which, who really could at the time? Even when Phelps wasn't in the way, Mitsuda still struggled to win a gold medal at any major meet until 2010 when he finally won the Asian title in the 200 fly. Before he led the Japanese contingent at the London Olympics, Mitsuda made a stop at the 2011 World Championships looking to bring home Japan's first ever gold medal in this event. In short, he did not. Phelps pulled ahead in the final 50 to secure his three-peat and leave Mitsuda with a silver medal. A downer, sure, but what might have gone unnoticed at the time was that this was the closest Mitsuda ever got to beating Phelps in the 200 fly up to this point. Of course, you might say, who cares, he still lost, which, yeah, but if you recall, Phelps revealed that he essentially had to drag himself through those years after Beijing. That could be interpreted as a vulnerability, and with Mitsuda getting ever so close to Michael heading into an Olympic year, the London Games presented a prime opportunity for him to finally rise above the man who seemingly could not be beat. After making it to the final as the top seed, he sat just 2 lanes away from that same man. As close as Mitsuda is to Phelps through the back half, he's still behind the defending champion by a few tenths of a second as he charges ahead during the third 50. As Phelps makes his way into the last turn, Mitsuda touches just behind him and is still very much in this race. Thanks to his spectacular underwaters, Phelps maintains a half body length lead with less than 50 meters to go. Takeshi Mitsuda is slowly inching up on Phelps, but he just... Wait a minute. Who the f*** is this guy? Mixed in with a field of aged veterans, Chad le Clos was just a 20-year-old kid from South Africa making the absolute most of his Olympic debut, though he still had to wait a long time to get here. His international career started 5 years prior to this at the 2007 World Cup. At the World Championships 2 years later, he just missed out on making the 200 fly semifinals, which could have led to an early exposure of what it was like to race Phelps, someone who le Clos has called his personal hero. A year after winning the Commonwealth Games in 2010, le Clos got to race him for the first time at Worlds and was just a few tenths of a second away from sharing the podium with his longtime idol. A few months later, they matched up again at the World Cup meet in Moscow, and le Clos actually beat Phelps in both butterfly events. That's got to be a huge confidence booster for a guy like le Clos. Our guy Chad carried that momentum all the way to London for his first Olympic Games representing South Africa. A few days into the meet, he matched up with Phelps in the final of the 200 fly. Now, regardless of how he performed, le Clos had already made history by even making it to this final. In the near 6 decades of this event at the Olympics, no man from South Africa has ever contended for a medal. And here stands Chad le Clos in prime position to actually win one in his first Olympic Games. Seated with the second fastest time, he found himself between his veteran counterparts who were chasing their own history. Once the race started, he hung with Phelps and Mitsuda pretty much the whole time and begun to close in on Phelps as the race drew to a close. That brings us here, just shy of 25 meters from the end of the race. Phelps is holding on to a very narrow lead as le Clos and Mitsuda begin to close in on him. He's on the verge of completing an incredibly rare feat at the Olympics, but the 2 swimmers above him are doing everything in their power to disrupt that. Will Phelps secure an Olympic three-peat in the event he's dominated for over a decade? Does this longtime veteran in Mitsuda finally have the swim of his life to dethrone the man who's beaten him so many times? Can Chad le Clos pull off an unparalleled upset against his childhood hero? It's time to find out. Welcome to a moment in history.
Le Clos and Mitsuda are closing. It's going to be close. Phelps is hanging on. He's a winner. Does he touch? He doesn't. Le Clos touched because Phelps got it wrong on the line. It's unbelievable. Mitsuda's third. It's a shocking upset. He had it won everywhere. He didn't get the stroke. He missed the touch.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, don't forget to give this video a like, and while you're down there, consider subscribing for more content like this. If you enjoyed this look back, I've got another one on the greatest relay of all time right over here. If you just want to see some fast swimming, click on the video right below it. Until next time, good night, and good swim, bro.